evening, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of Conversation with Giants. Tonight, I'll be speaking to a great giant in line with our tradition, our culture. Of course, in Africa, culture and tradition is very big for us. Tonight, I'm going to be speaking to a giant that reigns from the Niger Delta part of Nigeria, the attuned, the Olu of Warri, attuned III, the Olu of Warri. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
It's very nice speaking to you today.
Pleasure to be here.
It's an honor for us to have you on the show, Conversation with Giants. Today, we're going to be going through some conversations around your rise, how important tradition is for our country, for our continent, and just to educate the general public and the young people of the importance of keeping culture and tradition. So I'm going to go through a few questions, and hopefully we can have a conversation in a very, very relaxed and calm environment. Thank you so much for having us.
You're welcome.
I'm going to go straight to it. Your Majesty, we would like to know your journey to the throne. Is there really a journey, or are kings born and they're kings, all right? So there's this saying that when you're born, you're already a king. You only just manifest when the time is right. We'd like to know a little bit about your story. Some of us know, but a lot of people don't know the actual journey to the throne and how it's going so far.
Well, I know the famous question, are kings born, are kings made? It's definitely a bit of both. And let me use my own example, because not all, especially in Nigeria, we don't have too many kings, thrones, crowns in Nigeria that are based purely on primogeniture, where it's father to son, there's no conversation about it. I think in a lot of parts of Nigeria, you have ruling houses. So it could be, somebody could be king and he could be the first in his line. It could have been his grandfather who came before him, or great grandfather. So with that, there's a bit more of, when it comes to the turn of this ruling house, whose head is the lot going to come on?
Yeah.
But in my case, it's a bit more streamlined, a bit more guided, with the Ishakiri people and the Warri kingdom, the monarchy here. It is based on primogeniture, where it is sons will succeed fathers. It may not always be automatically the first son. I think Benin is the one place in Nigeria where it's sort of like the British monarchy, where it's clear. You know who the king is going to be. So he knows what is in store for him. With us, there's a bit variation. It could be the second son. It could be the third son. But we're not going to go into those details for now. So in my case, obviously, my father before me was king, his father before him, his father before him, and it goes all the way down. So I knew that there was a very good chance that I was going to end up on the throne. However, as you say, some may know, some may not know, my journey was not a straight one. I have said this, I think this is actually the first time I'm going to say this on camera. My journey to the throne was very much the story of Simba in The Lion King. It was very much Simba's story. And because there was a break. Because once Mufasa goes, Simba does not sit on the throne. Yes. His uncle comes in, and then, he has to go away completely, rediscover himself. Yeah. And when the time is right, without Simba trying to manipulate per se, it's as though everything was pulling him back. And in my case, because we were raised in a very, should I say, Western way, my parents were big on education, to the extent that formal education was unfortunately prioritized over cultural education. So we grew up in a very, should I say, Western mindset. So when my father passed in 2015, and the succession was not automatic or immediate. As difficult as it was, obviously it came with a lot of emotions. It was painful to see that there were quite a lot of people who were happy to see it go away from you. After that initial shock, because I guess there's so much more in the world than sitting on a throne. It's like, well, we'll just go on with life and still have a very good life. It was easy to walk away. And I think God did a work in my life while I walked away, because there could have been contention on my part. I could have contended. And I say this with all humility. If I contended, I had a very good chance to win. But you see, it's one of those moments where God looks and says, do you trust me? Even though you feel this is your birthright, it is your, should I say, entitlement. You can argue and fight for this thing. But if you walk away now, it will be better. And even when I walked away, I had to go through, my wife is always talking about healing. She's huge. She's big on healing. And the first time in my life I had to heal, or at least I was conscious that I need to heal and I need to forgive. And I had to go through a period of forgiving the entirety of Ishekiri people who allowed me to be denied. I had to forgive the chiefs. I had to forgive members of the royal family. I had to forgive every single one of my uncles who, even though they did not look at me and gang up, the feeling that these people ganged up on me and shifted me out, I had to call them by name and say, God, I forgive uncle this, uncle this, uncle this. And after that, it made it much lighter, to the point that when the second time around came and my uncle had passed, everybody was concerned. Like, oh no, this young man, he's coming. He's going to get us back.
Right.
They were genuinely afraid. And I was there thinking, why would you think that's what I'm coming here to do? Yeah. And they would refer to, we're Nigerians. They did it to you, you're going to get them back. And I'm like, I have nothing of the sort in my mind. And truly, some thought, oh no, he's going to do something. And here we are 4 years later. I am interacting with people that I know, orchestrated one being short James. And it's also like the story of Joseph in the Bible. You guys had your intention. You had your plans. And God was like, no, it would come out for everyone's good. I don't know how much detail I can go into, but I'm just trying to give you a general summary.
And I was at the Coronation, and I saw, and your speak that day was very unifying, and it was clear that you didn't come in with any vengeance, and you didn't come in to try and pay back anyone who delayed, didn't deny. But what you're saying is very similar to even the political landscape. And I'm sitting here thinking, I need to forgive all these politicians who betrayed me in the last election, because clearly when you release those people, a lot of good begins to come, right?
It's true.
It's very hurtful, because these are people that you grew up with, people you have invested in, and then you see them literally turn around and stab you. But I guess, it's a case of, delay is not denial. However, did you ever in your mind know that at some point in life you were going to ascend the throne? Because from your background, from your young days, from your days, teenage days and your youthful days, right? Even for those of us who have known you from a distance, you always kept certain level of dignity, composure. You always kind of withdrew. You kept a very close circle. Was that because you felt like at some point, right, you had to remain exclusive, so to speak, and because of that exalted position, you couldn't. There's certain things you couldn't do, and you had to have certain limits. Was that the case?
Yes, there are elements
Growing
of
up.
that. There are elements of that.
Yeah.
Because I could give you an easy answer and say, when your biological father is a king and he carries himself as such, as sons, whoever our fathers are, we tend to emulate our fathers consciously and unconsciously. We walk like them, we talk like them, we dress like them. So obviously what I was seeing every day was a king who happened to be my father.
Right.
So there was a way he carried himself and conducted himself, which I and my brother naturally emulated. And before we would always go to school, boarding school, going to college in the States, he would say, remember who you are and remember whose you are. And so even though, yes, we were princes, we saw ourselves specifically as we are ambassadors to the king. We represent the king. So even though there was no physical crown on our heads, and I got it especially when I was in the States, African Americans would say, there's something different about you. Obviously, they don't know anything about culture, and you just smile. You didn't want to go to America announcing you are yet again another Nigerian prince. They wouldn't take you seriously because there are so many Nigerian princes in the United States. But yes, you had to, I wouldn't say you had to be perfect because that comes with a lot of pressure. I lived a good life. I think there's also an aspect of grace that was upon my life that kept me guided as well. Also, I don't like, in my my character, I don't like wahala. I don't like problem. So I like to go to bed. I like to sleep well and know that when I wake up, there's nobody chasing me or there's nothing haunting my mind. So I think all that just enabled me to carry it gracefully, as it were, because the crown that you wear, heavy is the head. As heavy as it is to an extent physically, but also the emotional weight of the crown, you still need to lift your head high. So there was almost that seeing my dad carry it, and I'm like, he's not collapsing under that weight. So to an extent, it was training, I suppose. And that's just the background. Also, I dream. God has over time blessed me with dreams, and there isn't anything significant that has happened in my life that I did not first see it in a dream. What I did not see in a dream was I would be in a Simba Mufasa Scar situation. I did not see that. And I guess that was part of why there was disappointment and I had to heal, But after that, the dreams kept coming and we saw it. I saw it and I said, okay, it's going to happen. We did not know how. And you see, even from what you said about, even with the politicians, the truth of the matter is, the earth is alive. This soil that we walk on, it is alive. And it knows truth, it knows right, it knows wrong. Man is the one that complicates things. The Bible says the earth cannot bear false witness. It can't. And if you want to now bring that to our oracles in Nigeria and in Africa, those things do not lie. They cannot, because they are, whether they know it or not, they are in line with God's word. They are elements from the earth, and so they cannot bear false witness. It is the men who play those things that may bring an agenda and manipulate it. Similarly with election results, let's do it like this, and then those come with consequences. But where the thing speaks and it says, this is it, go home and rest. It's not necessarily go home and sleep and do nothing, because also you have to prepare yourself that this thing will happen. And I'm not just going to sit down here, eat, get fat, drink, get drunk, because you are doing harm. So, and I say all that, once again, I don't know how much detail I can go into, because
As much as possible.
if we go into so much detail, some may frown and say, "Oh, you are exposing too much." The things that are supposed to be mysterious. But there were signposts along the way. For instance, I'm filtering it in my head. Because I still want to keep a little mystery about it. There was a very interesting scenario that happened on the day of my uncle's coronation. I guess let me just use that one. I got to the coronation not late.
Oh, you were there?
I was there. One of the most...
How you know that?
One of the most humbling moments of my life. Actually, no. On the day my uncle was announced as the king, there's a famous picture where my hand was raised. So in 2015, when that happened for my uncle and his hand was raised, I was there. And when the people saw me coming with my brother and my sister, they shut the door and said we should even stand outside. It was really ugly. And then there was one brave gentleman who said, nope, show them some respect. And so they got chairs for myself and my sister to come in. How I didn't shed tears that day, I do not know. And I guess we were there to honor the fact that Atuwashi II was officially announced that he had passed, even though everybody knew, but that's the official announcement. So we were there to honor that, which we did. And then they now say, now they are going to bring in the one who will be king. And then my sister taps me and says, we cannot be witness to this. It is time for us to take our leave and allow them what they have accepted. So she stands up and I'm thinking, I cannot leave her. So I stand up and I face the chiefs and I bow to them. They were confused because what are you doing? And I walk out of the hall, obviously mumbling. And I guess that was my only form of protest. And went to Lagos, got on the plane, went to the United States. That was a tough moment. And believe it or not, my conscience pricked me for doing that, for not sitting through it all and watching my uncle be proclaimed.
So you think you should have stayed?
Probably. I should have stayed. But without insulting anyone, I just quietly left. And so that was September ending. It's now time to crown my uncle. I believe that was the 12th of December, 2015. And none of my siblings go. None of them. They're all in Texas. I was in Texas too. I had just become a father. My daughter was not even a month old. And I am having sleepless nights. And interestingly, after sleepless nights, the same sister who tapped me and said, it's time for us to go, comes and says, you have to go and represent the family at our uncle's coronation. I pray about it, and the Lord says, go. That was the longest flight I've ever been on. Houston to Lagos is not exactly a long flight, but it felt longer.
Yeah.
And then get to Warri, and my late father-in-law says, as brave of you, I will accompany you. All right. So I dress up. And I had a wardrobe malfunction as I was dressing up. And what I had prepared to wear literally was falling apart, thread falling apart. And I felt there was something divine about that. I end up wearing my father's clothes to my uncle's coronation, which was very weird. So I'm dressed in my father's clothes and I go. So we get there to the palace, even though everybody's at the coronation venue. And what happened months before? They see me coming. What do? They slam the doors. And I'm like, here we go again. But my father-in-law came with naval escort. And he saw that happen and he said, no way.
Not today.
And then he tells one of the naval officers or ratings to open the door. It wasn't ordinary because I don't think one man has that strength, because I'm told there were two people who stood behind the door. One military man goes and bam,
Makes the door open.
and both men literally stumble and the door opens. And then chiefs, members of the royal family, they see me and you can just feel the mood like he has come. And I'm so embarrassed. And my father-in-law says, I should enter the room first because I wanted him to go. Okay. So I step in first. And I make sure that he sits up front and I nicely go to the back and stand in the corner. Like at least we're in the room. Then my uncle hears that my father-in-law is around and then he comes out, greets him. And then the name I do not answer anymore, Shola. He says, where is Shola? And I'm at the back, I'm here. And he cracks a joke. Are we fighting? And of course, I make my way to the front. I kneel down and I greet him. And then he asks, how's your mom? How are your siblings? I'm like, they are fine. He was sat on a red cloth like this because he could not yet sit on the throne.
Yeah.
So I greet him and I'm going back. He says, where are you going? I says, I'm going back to stand where I was standing. He says, no. And then there's an empty chair right next to the throne. He says, sit down there. And the whole room, I look at everybody looks at me. He laughs. He says, sit down there. And I'm thinking, this is a trap. This is a setup. You know, I'm trying to text my mom and my wife. Pray for me. Pray for me. Pray for me.
Quick advice.
And I mumble a prayer in my mind and I sit down. People took pictures of that day. I didn't have a picture of it. And I'm there sitting down next to the empty throne. And I'm thinking, this is some kind of mockery, some kind of joke. But God knew why he allowed that happen. And then we all proceed and we go to the coronation venue. And I watch him be crowned. It was easier, but it was still difficult.
Yeah.
Soon, leave town, get on the plane, back to America. The next year, and so I go back to America, and that was where I started to have some funny dreams, which I know were emotional dreams. But then when I knew that my heart was no longer heavy, after I did all the forgiving everybody, the Oba of Benin is crowned in October 2016. And I played some small roles behind the scenes because my father-in-law then was very much involved in the planning. And I felt, well, let me do what I can do. And then on the day, my uncle is there, obviously, Obiame Ikewoli. And I am sat middle of the hall and I see him. And I am pricked in my conscience. Go and greet him. And I'm thinking, the whole Nigeria
Everyone
is here. Go and greet him. Oof. My feet. So I stand up and I couldn't come down the central aisle because Omonoba would come that way. So I had to go to the side, walk to the front, and walk all around to greet him. Everybody. It's as though in that moment that I stood up to go, all the last minute people running around, everybody had just, it's as though I was set up.
Everyone was still.
Everybody was still. And then here I come. And everybody is looking. I walk past the Sultan. I walk past the Emir of Kano. I walk past the Oni of Ife. And I walk past the Obi of Onitsha. And then my uncle sees me. And then he's smiling. And I'm smiling. And then he motions to me like, don't kneel, don't greet. And before he even puts his hand down, I have knelt. And obviously people are murmuring. Like, people now realize who I am. I greet him. Ogame. So some people applaud. And then he calls me. And then he says, my son, why are you embarrassing me? And I'm surprised. I said, Ogame, it is honor. And I must give you the honor. Ooh. He says, why are you away? Don't be so far away. Be coming home. I says, yes, I will try to come around. And then I walk back and I sit. That was such I don't even know how to explain it. But I guess from the day he was announced and I did what I did, to the day he was crowned, to the day Omonoba is crowned, you see God was doing a work in my own heart because he knew you're going to come and sit on the throne and you cannot come with bitterness in your heart.
And anything heavy.
You cannot come with resentment in your heart. You can't come with anger because the people who you are called to serve, you will hurt them. You will do damage to them. And after that, I had nothing but good wishes and good intentions. It's not like I had bad wishes for him per se.
They were free. But
I was completely free and happy for him.
Yeah.
Because once again, how much time do we have? We have to break cycles. You see, God is a fair God. He's just. In 1986, when my grandfather passed, my uncle, for whatever reasons, believed he should have succeeded my grandfather, even though my dad was a good 11 years older than him. But he believed the throne was his. But the oracles said otherwise. And he was very disappointed and removed himself. I don't know what process he went through for 28 years that my dad was on the throne. But I'm sure he also believed, I will sit on this throne. Which I'm sure is why God said, do not contend in 2015. Because there is one who believes his time has come. And even though you have justification, you could end up fighting battles that you are not supposed to be fighting. So I could have become king in 2015. And guess what? Every night I'll be doing night vigil. Doing prayer, peace. And it's not that you are not supposed to be king. It is not yet time. So after that encounter at Omonoba's palace, I started feeling happy for him that he also went through this disappointment in 1986. And God has given him the opportunity to sit. And unfortunately, his was not a long reign, but the desires of his heart
was fulfilled.
He
did 5 years, I think.
5 years on the money. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think about a week after he marked 5, he departed. So, I know I
heard about some drama around when he passed.
Yes.
His son rising again. And then another drama started.
Once again, I don't know how much detail. I don't know how much detail I can go into, but you see cycles that want to repeat themselves. And I am not in the head of his son, but I can only imagine how his son also felt. Once again, Atuashe has come to deny me the way his father denied my father. I can only imagine what was playing in his head. And most of it is not really shrouded in mystery because everybody was paying attention in 2020, 2021, where perhaps you can say they were not really paying attention in 2015, because there was this sense of, this time we're going to do it properly. We're going to make sure that there isn't room for misinterpretation or manipulation. And from what happened, with what I observed, everybody had their chance to stand before the oracle. Where I was not given that chance in 2015, they had said, his mother is Yoruba, so therefore he is disqualified. Even though, interestingly, the Gazette says the oracle has the final say. So there were some who said his father was a king. Let the oracle disqualify him. They said, nope, he will not even stand before the oracle. There were others who stood before the oracle and the oracle disqualified. I think it's very interesting that they did not even allow me be disqualified in front of the oracle. I think it's very interesting. But this time around, everybody who had a claim was presented. My uncle's two sons, their names were brought forward. And it wasn't done secretly. There were several witnesses. It wasn't them. All my uncles who are alive today went, skipped over every single one of them. Even came with a warning as to, if you force this issue, this is what would happen. And still some didn't even want me to be presented.
Any family members of yours?
They're all family.
Well, immediate family.
Oh, no. I mean,
because if his two sons
yes,
were put forward,
yes,
was your brother put forward as well?
So how it works is, when I say we are primogeniture,
okay,
the sons of the king are brought forward.
Okay.
So the senior son will come automatically and say, it is I. So he would come first, and it's not you. The other son comes, it's not you. My uncle only had two sons. So his house is done.
Yeah.
So the narrative was, now let's go to the house of the king before him, Atuashe II. And of course, people said, no. Bring it to Ikenwoli's father's house, Erejua, my grandfather. No problem. All my uncles who were bold enough to present themselves, every single one of them, at least 10 of them, 13, maybe 14, skipped over every single one of them in the presence of people. All right, let us now go to the house of Atuashe II. Oh, no. It was clear that there was still this, keep them away.
Yeah.
I wasn't there. I was actually abroad. And apparently it said to them, you people know who the king is. Why are you preventing him from coming forward? That was when some people now called me and said, it's time to come. That in itself was another battle. I was raised Christian. And of course, there are some versions of Christianity that feel we have no business standing before certain things that are perceived in a kind of way. So, as I said earlier, I dream. The Lord shows me dreams. And I dreamt. I was not exactly comfortable with the dream. But he began to make me restless and said, you will go before that oracle. And there was conflict. But I came to understand it was not for me to know that I am king. It was for the people to know beyond every shadow of a doubt that this is the king. And so I went. And there was no ambiguity about it at all. None whatsoever. There was the confirmation. It was done, first of all, privately, even though there were several witnesses. And then it was done officially in the palace for all to see. And that was the beginning of the journey to things manifesting. And I just remembered something. I wanted to say this at the beginning when we're talking about born versus made. It's both. I know back in the day, I know obviously these days with technology and iPhone and everything, AI and all of that, the way movies used to be made back in the day, the end was filmed first.
Yeah.
And then they would go back and start filming.
Yeah.
And I think in many ways, that's also how God's signature is. He has already determined the end. And so therefore,
we just fill in the blanks.
Now walk through the process of becoming. And even traditionally, going through the 3 months of seclusion, it's the same. So you have been hailed king, but they still refer to you as Omoba for the 3 months. And so the end of the movie is when the crown is placed on your head. But you were already hailed king.
Yeah.
But you still have to go
through the process.
Exactly.
And must be a very exclusive process. We're definitely not going to go into what this seclusion is. But it also sounds quite similar to even in the Yoruba land. I remember during the time of the Oni of Ife, he's the second son.
Right.
So everyone was a bit conflicted as to how does it happen. But I guess it's the oracle that decides. Essentially, that's what it is. And this story, for me, is quite similar to the political journey of aspirants, right? In your mind, you dream, I want to behold a position. And throughout that journey, there are different things that happen, different disappointments. And essentially, when you get there, it's like, how do you prepare? And essentially, I guess that's the question I'm trying to ask. How do you prepare when you ascended the throne? Did you begin to learn while you were in there, or while you had the period of seclusion of 3 months? Did you kind of figure everything out there? Because it's quite a lot to unpack, right, as king. I think for me and for young people, the most difficult part of being a king will be dealing with people that are 80 and 90, and it's tough.
It is tough.
It's tough because in Africa and in Nigeria, we're very cultured and we're about respect.
Right.
So growing up, you've seen all these uncles. We have to and these same people, with gray hair and can barely walk, and they're 90 years old, and all of a sudden, all these people are bowing down. How do you kind of absorb and take on all that responsibility? Because it's a huge thing when it happens.
They say when you become king, you don't have mother, you don't have brother, and for me, that's tough. Especially as I am privileged to be the first king in a couple of centuries whose mother is alive. So, yes, publicly, I do not stand up for her and all of that, but I still acknowledge she is my mother, and I give her that honor. Because you do take on a new identity when you become king. Hence, you drop the old name, you have a new name, and you're in a new consciousness. And I must say, it is actually humbling. I must say it again. It is humbling to see old men I don't even want to distinguish between old men, whether they came from the village or old men that have achieved in this life.
Yeah.
To see old men come and kneel.
Very accomplished people.
And put their forehead on the floor. Every day. In my quiet time, because to sit here, you must carry God with you. There is no other way. Because one thing I know is that the only person who can accept worship and not lose it is God. Traditionally, the people see the king as deity. That's all right. But I cannot deceive myself. Because there is a trap there. There is temptation there that you be self-deceived also and believe you are deity. So even when you want to talk about how the Bible says, we are like gods, and we sometimes we do have the authority and the dominion to speak as God, but still with humility, because God is still above us, looking at us.
Yeah.
And so the only way I can say this, it's only been 4 years, and it's going to be, God willing, there's a long road ahead. I take it as though I sit here because God has permitted me to sit here, and He is the one that they are reverencing, not my person. That conversation is in my head. It's sort of similar, I think it was in ancient Greece and ancient Rome, when one man would come back after a great military campaign, and the commander of the army, and obviously all the country came out to hail him as the victorious warrior. And you are being paraded. And even the emperor would celebrate you in your grand parade. Somebody is holding a golden laurel above your head. You don't wear it. It's held above your head. And the entire time he's whispering in your ear, remember, thou art only a man. The entire time. Because all that worship and accolades, if you are not careful, you will begin to think that indeed you are infallible. And that was in place because a lot of warriors had got familiar with the emperor. And of course, the emperor had to cut them down because he was the one that was seen as deity. But I use that analogy to say that, and this is in my head. Yes, there is a crown on my head, and the people see you as after God. It's you. After God. And I am not trying to rub shoulders with him. I'm not trying to get in trouble with him because I started to believe that because you see old men and old women and respectable people in society who happen to be Shekiri come and they are literally worshipping to a degree. Humility for each day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking about God, and sorry I keep referring this to public life because being a king is being in the public space.
Right.
When I ventured into politics in 2019, I was told that you have to pick a side. Either you're going with God or you're going with us. So there's darkness, there's light.
Darkness.
Yeah. Darkness, quote unquote. And what that essentially means is there's this myth around there's some power you can get from somewhere that isn't power from God that can get you far politically. And in when it comes to Nigerian tradition, a lot of what is out there, people feel that there's a lot of things that they would not do naturally, that the crown and the atmosphere comes with all types of things that ordinarily, is not maybe, it won't model the Christian faith or the Islamic faith. It's its own thing, and I'm not necessarily saying it's wrong. It's just their own traditional things that they do. But we have seen that Ogiame III has shown the world, and you did it from day one. I remember when the crown was put on your head, you had a cross. And I was actually waiting to see if the crown was going to fall off or melt or something. But the point is, you've been successful at blending your faith, what you believe in, God, Christianity, and successfully executing the responsibilities of a king and essentially ruling the people. How did the people accept? I know there are a lot of really deep traditional people when it comes to our various traditions in our country, and there's some things that they definitely would just say no. But you found a very interesting way of getting everyone to realize that God can be at the center of everything we do, not just politics, not just business, not just family, but even tradition and even on the throne. How have we been able to maneuver that?
Let me start by saying everything in creation, the things that are natural, culture, tradition, astronomy, zodiac, there is, to what degree do you understand the thing? The surface level, what you're told. I think it was David who said, where can I hide? Even if I am in deep darkness, in Sheol. He didn't say hell, but we say hell. He says, you are there. So this is how I see it. Once again, 4 years in.
Yeah.
This is how I see it. Once you put yourself in God, we are 80s babies, even though technically I don't have an age anymore. Yeah. We grew up on Voltron.
Yeah.
The 90s Power Rangers.
Robocop.
You go into the Zoid. You go into the robot.
Yeah.
And that is how I see it. I go into God.
As the shield.
Exactly. And I'm not going into him because I want to come and fight perceived culture, tradition, deities. There is nothing to fight about. There's nothing to fight about. Because I did not fight to come here. Yeah. And I know he brought me here. So he hasn't brought me here to say, now you have to, these people will take you over from here. No. But these things, they do exist. So we're not going to come here and act like, oh, these things don't exist. They are there. They are legal, spiritual. Covenants were made. And God is actually a God of covenants. You enter a covenant, you will honor it. But when you now bring him into it, it's different. So,
changes everything.
So if I'm going in there on my own, as a Tuashi the third, I am bound to covenants that were made before me.
Yeah.
Because when I am called, Ogian
subjects you to that.
My people tell me, Baba, you made a covenant when you came from Benin. And I always joke, I said, I didn't come from Benin and make a covenant. And they laughed. They said, yes. Ginowa the first, Ogiame, you answer his name. So
it ties in.
Blood. And if you take that matter to the courts of heaven, the God I serve will say, what they are saying is true.
Yeah.
It is true. But if he's saying there is a way that you can navigate this, and I am the one who will show you that way, raise your hands and let him show you the way. So what I have found so far is, I will use this example. My father before me, Christian, stubbornly Christian. And there were things that his Christian faith told him he will have no part of it. And when I came in, I wanted to model myself on how my father did it, because we want to do things the way our fathers did it.
Yeah.
And then the Holy Spirit will prick me and say, is this reign being modeled on Atuache II, or the way I tell you it's going to be? Tough. And it's not that the way Atuache II did it was wrong.
That's him.
But in the way he wants to take you, even to people you grew up with in church will say, oh no, he has definitely lost the way. You can't put God in a box. You can't. And he has shown me that if you want to restrict yourself to the understanding that this covenant, this throne, was established in 1480, and there was a covenant with the progenitor of this throne, which is true. And then he now zooms out and says, but there was a covenant before that. So are you going to be bound by the covenant of 1480? Or are you going to be bound by the covenant that happened literally at the foundation of the world? So that is the suit I enter and I operate in. So when you are met with these things and you respond from that place, not in confrontation or anything like that, what else is to be said? And for me, it's, well, God, you have allowed me come here. My life is to be a billboard for you. Because if you do not help me, what they will say is, well, we allowed a couple of Christians come, and during their reign, X, Y, Z. So I take it that it's not me, it's your name at stake. So guide me and let the people see that when I did it your way, there was good. So that's the mindset from which I operate. It's not easy. It truly is not easy. But I believe it will be well in the fullness of time.
So essentially, it's possible to carry your faith into the world of tradition, into the monarchy, and execute based on that, because you're clearly doing it and it's working. That leads me to my next question around the Warri kingdom, right? Ishekiri people. I happen to be part Ishekiri. I don't know a lot about it because it's from my maternal side. But my grandfather for me is like a role model for me. He's someone that I've studied and made me have a lot more interest, right, in Delta, the Niger Delta, Western region, Warri as a kingdom, and the Ishekiri people. I've been told that they are very difficult. I've met a few very hard-headed people. How has it been? The acceptance. I know the love is there because whenever they see you, everyone is going wild. But the acceptance, and also in the last 4 years, ever since you ascended the throne, there's been this peace and this calm and stability. The Niger Delta is responsible for 70 to 80% of Nigeria's revenue today, for the rich oil nature of the area, and it's very controversial because there's always been a lot of issues around oil theft and just general insecurity issues. But ever since you've been there, it's been steady positivity in terms of peace, in terms of the people, in terms of even our oil production. Would you say you've intentionally done certain things to keep everybody happy? And how have you been able to manage the people within the kingdom?
First of all, you can't keep everybody happy.
Yeah.
It's not possible. Yeah. And I'm glad to hear that to you, looking outside in, that it appears as though things are on the up and up. Because it's not without its battles and problems, obviously. Our people, Shekiri people, amazing people, absolutely amazing. I don't even want to use the term small but mighty, because we're not small. We're not small. We are. When I was young, I remember hearing this as young as 8, 9 years old. Shekiri people would be saying, obviously because they were arguing amongst themselves, they had just come to see my father, and they would say, Shekiri, as small as they are, if you can govern this small tribe, you can govern Nigeria.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, what kind of statement is that? You know how complicated Nigeria is. I see what they were talking about now. And for me, that statement was not in vain. It wasn't in vain. Shekiri people are actually very prophetic, whether they know it or not. It's part of our spiritual inheritance. Not everybody is a prophet, but in their essence, they are prophetic. And I like to look at where God has placed us, because in Shekiri, that is to say that we are surrounded by blessings. That is who we are. That is God's identity on us. But you see, sometimes there is contention where there is blessing. Universal.
Yeah.
They say the original word for the word blessed means he who is envied. So therefore, where blessing is, there's envy, there's contention. Not just from outsiders, but even within.
Yeah.
So it actually makes sense that the people are very boisterous and creative in the way they are.
Yeah.
And this is once again where I say you need God to be here. God is the one who is going to show you this is how you navigate with these people. Because if you want to scratch the way it's itching you, there will be problems. Yeah. And you cannot just capitulate and say, I do not want to offend. I want to make them happy. There will be problems.
Yeah.
So, 4 years in, we just take it one day at a time.
Yeah.
One day at a time. And I find in them seeing that one is really trying to be fair, just, hence the motto, righteousness and justice, which are the pillars of God's throne. And we try as much as humanly possible to replicate God's throne and his ways on this earthly throne. And even if it might be met with skepticism or pessimism, once they chew it and ponder it, the hope is that they will see that, no, there's something right about this. Let's give it a chance. And that's how we just approach it every day.
Yeah. Today, a role model for a lot of people. What modern tradition looks like, what a responsible Nigerian looks like, what the face, you've changed the face of tradition and what the monarch should represent across Africa. And you've really redefined those institutions. However, there is this thin line between traditional institutions and political institutions. They must work together, because politics are people serving the people and tradition is ruling the people. In Nigeria, what do you think the role of the monarch should be in terms of politics and governance in today's Nigeria? Historically, the traditional institutions have been very, very instrumental as in terms of how politics is maneuvered these days, and I'm speaking from a little bit of experience. It seems like some of the traditional institutions are not as influential when it comes to political decisions, when it comes to being able to move a mob of people in one direction. What do you think the role should be as far as a monarch in modern day governance and politics today?
That's a loaded question. Let me try to say that I think I said earlier that the land is alive. And when you're dealing with politics, you're dealing with power, you're dealing with interests. These are things that don't just surrender and lay over. There is interaction.
Yeah.
And you can't escape that.
Yeah.
You know, we are political animals as human beings. But I think the role of traditional rulers and the traditional institution, where it comes working hand in hand with politicians or politics and governance, I think it should be one of non-partisan first.
Okay.
You should be above partisan politics, because if you allow yourself to be partisan, you make yourself fair game to the opposition to say, oh, you spoke in favor of this candidate and this party, so therefore we will do X, Y, Z. And that is not necessarily good for thrones. And because in the game of chess, you have to protect the king. The king, the throne has to be protected, even from elements within, not even elements outside. So with that foundational understanding, when it's time to interact with these individuals and entities, I suppose it's always to point them to values, so that you do not appear as though you are attacking somebody's ego or somebody's idea of how a thing should be. When you just simply keep pointing to values, and if possible, point them to God, that is always a good sounding board, I believe. Because you cannot successfully misquote that. Some will say be silent. You cannot misquote silence. And there is a place where one is silent. But when you say role model, Allen Iverson comes to mind. I don't want to be a role model. I didn't choose to be a role model. But this is the path that God has placed me on. And I do know that we as human beings, not only when you sit in an exalted place, we are supposed to reflect Him. So for me, that is the starting point. Reflect Him, His ways, His words. And sometimes they are not easy to chew on.
Yeah.
They are not.
Yeah.
And ego may not like to chew on what God has for us. And so when you say ego, when you talk about politics, it's about power, it's about ego, it's about asserting will and influence and agenda. So even in how there is a wisdom that comes in how you dispense.
Yeah.
Yes. Once again, you need God to be here.
Yeah.
Especially in dealing with the political class, because there's already this weird love-hate relationship between the political class and the traditional class, because these are people who vie for the affections, the love, the respect, the votes of the people. They have to seek it, lobby for it. And those who sit on the thrones just seem to naturally command it. And sometimes if ego leads the way, it's like, why do they naturally have this? Let's find a way to fold their hand and draw. That is when ego leads the way.
Yeah.
So it's a balancing act, and God helps with each day.
You grew up in the West, you schooled in the US. A lot of your adult life, the formative days, was in the Western part. So that has a lot to do with your exposure, your mindset is very Western. The kingdom you met, what are the things you would like to see to bring to the kingdom that would maybe modernize, westernize, develop it beyond how you met it? What are some of the things that you're doing to attract people from the diaspora who naturally would not be anywhere close? Businesses, for example, and I know from history, you're someone that is very fit and likes to work out. And there is this paddle fever that is going around the whole of Nigeria now, and paddle seems to be the new thing. So just Western things that need to be embedded into the culture just for the development and for the progress of the kingdom. What exactly is the house? What is the monarch doing, and what are you intentionally doing about ensuring that you're keeping up?
I'm going to go beeline here. Yes, the West really played a part in my upbringing and my orientation. But I think I did have a bit of a balance because I was born and raised in Warri.
Okay.
I didn't live in Lagos or Abuja. I lived in Warri until I was 11. And then I went to boarding school in Kwara State. And I was there till 17, thereabout, just before turning 18, and then going 4. So I was very grounded in the Nigerian way.
And the culture.
Yes, very much so. So even when one went abroad, I did not, I was not quick to become true American. No, I didn't. Just appreciate what was good about it, but still very much grounded. Now, here we are. When I think, if I'm understanding what you're saying about what has been accumulated and absorbed from the West, I like to point to the Orient. So I want to come away from the West now. And I always like to use the examples of Thailand, Japan, because they are still very much traditional societies. There are still monarchies there, monarchies that are worshipped. This is 2025. So it's not just Africans who want to worship their monarchs. The king of Thailand is seen as a god. The emperor of Japan is seen as a god. And these are societies that are technologically at the top. So for me, it shows that it is possible, because when we say the West, everybody wants to just bring the whole bathtub of Americanized, wearing jeans, democracy, phase out all these traditional institutions. We need to be careful. So that's why I always point to the direction of societies that are advanced, and yet they are still respectful to their heritage, to their traditions. Having said that, so if we focus on what's happening in Japan and in Thailand, education, first of all, before we talk about anything, education. Because once the mind has seen or is enlightened, anything you are trying to do that is for good, for advancement, for infrastructure and all that, it is easier for these things to be accepted. You are creating the right atmosphere and climate for it. So education is the bedrock, number one, without a doubt. After education, I have found that I know not everybody would have, the majority would not travel. And when I say travel, it's not necessarily passport and go to Dubai or London, or we need to encourage our people to leave their hometowns, to leave where they were born and raised. Go to another state. That is, if you're from the Niger Delta, go and live in Jos. for a while. Visit. Go and live in Ekiti and see that things are done differently in other places. It doesn't have to be America.
Yeah.
There is something that traveling does, that it really opens the mind. So once again, it's not that you should throw away what you have and what you were raised in. So once you're educated and you've left home and you've come back to home, you would also be provoked to see the shortcomings of how things are done at home. To say, look, we can do this in a different way, and not in a way that is insultive or making those who haven't had the privilege to leave to make them feel inferior. Yeah. Once again, there is a wisdom in how you apply these things. So what I am really hoping to achieve during this reign is, first of all, for my people, for their heads to be lifted. Where situation, circumstances, condition, economic, mental, societal has made them feel small, has made them feel frustrated, downtrodden. It is for them to have a renewed sense of, this is your identity, this is who you are. I want to be careful with that, because that can come with a different type of pride, which also can get one into trouble. So yes, you can raise your head up and be proud of who you are, but you also have to be coachable and ready and trusting, because that's what's happened in the Niger Delta, in Ishekiri in particular. I think the people are so disappointed, not only by modern Nigeria, but even before Nigeria was an independent country. It's been one year after another of yet another disappointment, yet another betrayal of trust. So anybody who shows up now with, I have a plan, I have a good intention, you're met with, oh God, what are you saying? Just share this money. Just share the money.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to plant.
Nobody.
It's the Esau syndrome in Nigeria.
Yeah.
I want to eat this now.
Quick route.
I want to eat this porridge. I want to eat this seed, because I do not believe that it will even grow.
Yeah.
And even if it grows, I don't believe that I may be here to benefit from it growing. And that is doing so much damage to this country, to how we do business, to our policies, so it's like everywhere is hostile.
No longevity.
Everywhere is hostile. The policies do not encourage people to come and plant and wait. And I'm not talking about government and policy, just the way we run, everybody is just do it quick and go. And I think from the grassroots up, even in traditional institutions, because that's where I believe the traditional institution actually affects even how politicians see themselves, because everybody sees themselves as king in their village, in their hometown. So when they become governor, president, they want to operate, even though they know it's a democracy, they want to operate like they are king. And democracy does not really go like that. So I think where you now have the traditional institution showing a different approach, a benevolent approach, that has so much adverse effect you cannot even imagine. Somebody asked me once if I felt like a mascot. I said, yes, I do feel like a mascot sometimes. So when, Shekiris see me, or even non-Shekiris who like me, just show up. You don't even have to say anything. They're just alive. They're happy. Their mood changes. It was like that. The way he appeared makes me feel good. Now, beyond just the way you appear, the things you are saying, the things you are doing, your actions, they are also observing those things. They are observing it. And one example actually comes to mind, because it's one that I get a lot. when I first sat on the throne and I said, I want Olori, I want my wife to greet me first before the chiefs greet. It was a bit controversial. But you see, there's a wisdom. It's all right. The chiefs do not kneel to greet, they stand. But in me saying I want my wife to greet me first, she kneels. So they see her humble herself. And now to the ego, okay, yes. The wife is setting a good example for all you women to see. This is how you honor your husband. So that was not even necessarily the intention. But we're getting reports that women who were a bit stubborn, they see Olori regularly kneeling before Ogiame. There is a trickle-down effect where it's now like, honor your husband, honor the man in your life. That was not the intention, but we are getting reports and testimonies that this thing that would have been met with hostility ended up being a good thing. So that aside, even in the way we go about being considerate of the plight of the people and trying to encourage them to stand up on their own without necessarily waiting for government intervention, because there's a long line in waiting for government to come. We're also hoping that gives hope to the people. Once again, them imitating what the king does. They may laugh, but eventually, Nigeria, there's a lot of herd mentality in Nigeria. They see good, like, okay, let me buy that, let me try that. So you see the king is, he's farming, he has a farm. Okay, maybe I should also go and farm. And other examples like that, multiply effects.
Ogiame, God. A lot of people feel kings are not humans. They're not men. They don't have emotions. They don't have blood. What people would like to know, what a typical day in the life of Ogiame. What do you do when you wake up? The typical day that isn't necessarily with the crown on. I know the crown is always on, but typical day when you're just being yourself.
Well, it depends.
Maybe that never happened.
It depends on where I am. When I am in Warri, day begins in the presence of God. There's no other way for day to start, because that is where you center yourself. And if it's not the very first thing you do, you don't know what's waiting for you out there. So that's how it starts. And once that's done, obviously, wife, kids, if we're in Warri, giving them a little bit of time and catch up on the news while you're having breakfast and all. So typically, I try to have family and self-time till 11 a.m., thereabout. Because once it's 11, it gets busy. Whether it's officially having appointments with people coming into the palace, whether it's official or not, it's a revolving door.
Something happening.
They will come. And I generally try to ensure that it doesn't happen before 11. And I also try to ensure that it concludes before 5, sometimes push it to 6. That is if it can be controlled. So obviously, once all that is done, I try to make sure that my evenings are as much as possible relaxed, downtime, dinner, family, TV.
Have you done homework with the kids since you became king?
Ooh, no, not briefly. I've done a few. I've helped a couple of them out of 3, but it was very brief. I used to be more active at that, and I must say, I guess time with them has suffered a bit. But I do put them to sleep. I do bedtime. When we are away from Warri, Abuja, Lagos, I actually drive them to school. Yes. hid it
in Abuja
in Abuja
or Lagos.
Abuja. I drive them to school,
Okay.
but
in camouflage.
in camouflage, obviously. But I think it's important. These are the ways you try to balance your personal life. We saw it with our father. Did the best. You do not necessarily want it to repeat itself, because these kids, they will be 18 and 21 in no time. In no time, they will be gone.
Out of the house.
They're gone. And so, unfortunately, their father became king when they were very young. So if it had happened in 10 years' time, as opposed to 4 years ago, perhaps it would have been a bit better, because there would have been more time for us to have bonded. And it's like, okay, well, we had growing up years with our dad. They still have it now, but obviously not in as much detail and as it was before.
Or maybe on holiday. It's a lot more.
So I take holidays. Yes. Once again, this is very much unprecedented. Yeah. And I am very serious about my holidays. Cool. No AIDS, kids. I want to be in a place where I can be human. Yeah. And people are not always greeting you, and it's good for your mental
balance.
It's very good for that. You know, I don't understand how people say, I want to be famous. There are people who say, I want to be a celebrity, and I look at them and think, do you really want to be?
People around
you don't.
Every
do you mean you want to be rich and successful? Yeah. Very good. Yeah. But that everybody recognizes you? All right, I don't think so. So, yeah.
Because I know back in the day, I've seen before you ascended, I ran into you a few times running in Manana. That doesn't happen anymore. Or if it does, maybe we camouflage again. What?
No comment.
We'll look out.
No comment.
We'll look out. But
no comment.
I know. I mean, people definitely want to know, is it possible to be in the public limelight, be in the public office, be in the public space, and still be normal? And I sat with a politician once when I was consulting, and he said to me, you make this decision, you're going to lose one of three things. Some people are lucky to lose all three. Your health, your peace of mind, and your family. Some lose one out of three. If you're lucky, you lose one out of three. Is that the case? Ascending to the throne, being a king, is it so heavy that you have to be on all types of vitamins? And when you say people lose your health, it's not necessarily, you're sick, but you have to have supplements, and you're now taking things because there's a lot more pressure. And then your peace of mind being, but from 11 to 6 o'clock, it literally putting out fires across board. And like we pointed out with family, you cannot have enough hours in a day to be able to balance it, but you have to find a way. And that's why we go on vacation and things like that. But is it similar where, it's 1 out of 3, 0 out of 3, or sometimes 3 out of 3 as a king?
I haven't heard it specifically presented like that. But as you mentioned the 3, I said, wow, it sounds like what is facing you. Yeah. But I'm not one who is naive, but I'd like to define my own. I speak the atmosphere around me. Yeah. And I say there is a blessing that God gives that comes without sorrow.
Yeah.
And I believe He has given me this, and I expect that there will be minimal sorrows. I'm still a young man, and I'm not going to wait until I'm older to start. So I'm already just trying to make sure that the lifestyle is as healthy as possible, because this is a marathon. Peace of mind. There's always a lot on my head and my mind at any point in time. But I sleep well. Each night I sleep well. So that helps in terms of peace of mind. Family, you have to war for it.
Very intentional.
Very intentional. Yeah. You don't get it right all the time. Yeah. But as long as you know this is what needs to be done, so that you do not minimize the losses, I suppose. Because in trying to have it all, you may stress yourself. You may. So my approach is just spread and minimize losses as much as possible.
I think you're 100% right. I mean, it's about finding the balance And also, I think one major element is your partner, your life partner. In your case, Olori, doing an amazing job in balancing the sides that ordinarily you would have been there to fill. And I think it's very important when someone makes that transition into public life, and in your own case, being a king. However, you were a private sector person, businessman, in different sectors. Would you advise someone who is doing well in business, pretty stable, has a very, very decent trajectory and future? Would you advise a young man, in my own case, and let me refer to myself, by my human calculation, if I'm steady in my work, my business life, the chances are I would remain successful or be more successful. I've now found a way of disrupting everything and saying, I'm not interested anymore. This is what I want to do. Would you advise the young people today who have the passion, right, to go into public life, to go into politics, some who are also in line for, have the royal blood, who have been running away for a very long time? Would you advise, those sort of people to consider, to come into it, to pursue it? What would be your advice to the younger generation in my position, and in your own case 4 years ago,
Right.
in that position?
With caution, yes. Once again, these days, people are saying they want to retire when they're 45, which means they want to put systems in place so that there's a machinery in place that the business runs without them. Yeah. I think in Nigeria, we still try to micromanage a lot of things.
Yeah.
So if you have the call upon your life, the ambition, the desire, you want to make sure that your business doesn't suffer. So if you are able to put a system in place where it does not require your ever-present attention, if you're able to do that, my answer is yes. Because we need selfless leaders who are enlightened, who are exposed, who have seen the world and still have a heart for home, to come back and play their part in building this country up. Not everybody can be governor. There are only 36 spots. Not everybody can be senator. There's only 109. Not everybody can be House of Rep. So if you have a royal calling, and I have gotten some calls where people say, your story has encouraged me to go home and, go after it. And I'm glad to hear that, because we cannot all, as we were saying before this conversation started, we cannot all live in Lagos and Abuja. We can't. Lagos and Abuja is doing very well without us. Our home states, our hometowns, we can't leave it for people who don't have a choice. And it's not going to be all rosy, because when you going back there might be some resentments to say, oh, you have the silver spoon in your mouth, you're successful. The mentality of lack, don't come here and take this from us. We cannot be discouraged. It's a battle, but it's a battle worth fighting.
I'm definitely encouraged by that. But when I ventured into politics, I got a lot of backlash for my inability to speak the language. And I want to speak a bit about that, because it was beyond Yoruba language. Yoruba is on one side. You cannot speak Ondo dialect proper. And I'm not too sure what the experience was like, but we all grew up abroad. And I blame it on my parents every time. I said, you guys are the cause of this problem, right? A lot of parents today don't feel it's necessary to teach the kids the local language. But some of us are being flogged day and night because of that handicap. What would be your advice? What was your experience, if any? What would be your advice for the future generation, our generation, who are raising their kids today, in terms of the interest in language and the tradition and the culture in general?
I empathize with you on that point.
Yeah.
When you speak about that handicap, because I also went through that as well. But I will say that we must first look to the heart. And I'm talking to Nigerian people generally.
Yeah.
Oftentimes in life, your helper does not look and sound like you. Oftentimes in life.
This is true.
But of course, there's always that tendency that you want it to be what you imagine it to be. And so you are stuck on saying your helper must look like this. And oftentimes in Nigeria, we have missed our help because we basically chase them away. We ridicule them, we humiliate them. And that's why I say it must always be about the heart. And I will most definitely say that if my coming to this throne was in the political manner where the people could look at me and say, I probably would have been rejected because I did not look like them, sound like them. So I really empathize with you on that. But as I say, your heart, your deeds will speak.
Yeah.
Because after a while, they start saying, we've had many people who look like this model we wanted to look. And how has it worked out for?
It did nothing for them. Essentially, yeah.
So if they're bold enough and daring enough to say, you know what, let's give this guy a try.
Essentially, that's like the narrative now. They're saying, oh, he cannot speak the language, but it's English that they speak in National Assembly. Let me go and speak the English for us. So you're right. It's the persistence and your heart when they begin to see that this man really has good intentions. So it's not really about, the language. But is it important for our kids who are 10, 11, 12, 15 today for us to throw them into learning and ensuring that, so they don't have to go through what we... Do you think it's a vital...
Where that is possible.
It's a vital...
Where that is possible. Where that is possible. All across Nigeria, if I could go back, I wish going to school, we were taught maths and everything in the local language, and then learn English.
Yeah, because
I think that would also bridge the gap that Africa suffers.
Yes.
Period. Yes. So if we're able to begin addressing that now, basically planting that tree now, and that shade is for our kids. Yeah. I encourage us to plant that tree now.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Your Majesty, when your reign, the story of your reign is told 50, 60, 70 years, as long as God keeps us, what would you want that story in one sentence or a paragraph? What would you want that reign to be about?
Oh. He showed us how to go past our limitations, how to go past what was previously considered difficult, impossible. He showed us the meaning of restoration, because that is what Atuwashe is, the one who restores, the one who rebuilds. And I think, God willing, if I am able to, He will help me live up to that name, especially where He is concerned. I think that will do it for me. So, Tola, I want to wish you a happy 40th. I know people say life begins at 40. I know you've already lived a very interesting life coming up to 40. You mentioned your grandfather, Chief Okotiebo, great man. And my prayer for you is that as you get into the seriousness of life in your 40s, building, accumulating, problem solving, that where he left mantles before he departed this world, that God will be gracious enough to give you some of those mantles. And may you carry it well. May you carry it gracefully, humbly. May you realize what it is to be one who builds and carries people. And as he gives you all these blessings, may you enjoy it with peace. May you enjoy it with good health. May you enjoy it with long life. So I bless you with all this and more. Happy birthday.
Nor TV, showing on Verizon Fios channel 269, Optimum channel 1100, and on Digicel. Or on our website www.nortv.com, or download the app from the App Store or Play Store.